Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you all to yet another session under the Storage and Handling Knowledge series, a knowledge platform that is built specifically for the intralogistics domain. So since last more than a year, we have been holding these knowledge sharing sessions on various topics, whether it is different types of equipment, whether it is about different types of applications, how to choose the equipment for an applications, whether it is about safety, or it is about the various aspects of an equipment, whether it is batteries, chargers, or controllers. We have had covered a wide range of topics on this platform, and we are extremely thankful to all of you for all your support in making this platform a huge success. We have been seeing people coming back on this platform again and again to gather small bits of information that we share on this intralogistics domain. Today, we bring to you a very special topic, which is leasing solutions for storage and material handling equipment. Now, all through these sessions that we have been handling, we have had one session on rentals of material handling equipment, so that we are able to touch upon the commercial aspects of using any equipment or investing in any equipment. Today, we do another aspect. We intend to carry out another aspect, knowledge of leasing solutions for material handling equipment. Now, we have on board with us a very eminent speaker, Mr. Devesh Muni, who is going to take us through this very interesting topic. Now, let me tell you that in India, generally people have been going in for either capex model where they've been buying the equipment, or they've been going through the rental model. Now, a leasing model has not been something which people have adopted, and we believe that it is more to do with the know-how of this model than anything else. So we thought, why not use this current platform to spread the knowledge about this particular topic so that people can take informed decisions and have leasing also as one of the consideration sets when they're planning their finances, especially for storage and material handling equipment. As I mentioned, we have an eminent personality, Mr. Devesh Muni, today. Devesh is a specialist in selling financial solutions to corporates, which includes leasing and analyzing residual risks to be taken across asset categories, while structuring a customized solution to meet the client's requirement. His skill sets include classification of leases as per international and Indian accounting standard, deal structuring, including step up, step down, tax efficient structure, sale and lease back, understanding of legal and taxation norms related to leasing of equipment, contract negotiations, residual risk evaluation, managing relationships with various NBFCs and banks. He is currently working as a vice president of Rent Alpha Private Limited, and he has previously had the opportunity to work at Srey PNB Paribas Group, Oracle Finance, RentWorks, and LeasePlan. With that introduction, I would request Mr. Devesh Muni to come online and share his thoughts about this particular topic. Before he begins, I have a small request to all the audience that please post your questions on the in the chat box, and put your name while you are posting your questions. This will allow us to get back to you in case we are not able to complete answering all the questions within the allocated time. With that, I would request Mr. Devesh to please come online and share his thoughts on this topic.
Devesh, please unmute yourself.
Am I audible now?
Yes,
Hello?
yes.
Right. Thank you, Abhishek, for this opportunity. It's my pleasure to be on this platform. Let me take you through what we would be covering under this session in today's topic.
Devesh, I'm so sorry to interrupt. You are on mute again. I think you hit it by mistake.
Yeah, sorry. So what we would be covering under this session today is what is leasing, because many clients that I have interacted with, they still have preconceived notion of what is EMI, what is lease, what is rent. So I would like to cover up as to what is leasing and also various types of leasing structures that can be customized to suit the client's requirement. What is the current market scenario? As Abhishek rightly pointed out, that liquidity, cash is the king right now. So we would be covering a little bit on that. We would look at some of the benefits of leasing, because not the same benefit is applicable to all clients. The leasing is generally customized and structured in a manner that we actually customize it to suit a particular benefit that the client is looking at. So we will cover some of the benefits in this session. For tax-paying companies, how it helps them to save on taxes as well. We will do a small comparison. We will not go too much into detail on that topic, but I will give you a glimpse on how the leasing can be evaluated by their finance teams of the companies. Many companies are looking at cash injection from various sources, and I would like to cover how sale and leaseback also can be treated as a structure where there is capital injection into the business without raising debt on books, and the formalities for that. We will take a few case studies which I have come across in the last year where leasing was successfully done and some cases where leasing did not work as well. And we will go through the process flow of generally what the leasing companies require, what are the documentation and all those things. And we will leave the session open for question and answers. So what is leasing by definition? It is nothing but actually just a contractual arrangement where the party owning the asset, which is a lessor, is giving the equipment to the lessee only for the right to use those equipments. The asset is always owned by the lessor. A right to use is transferred to the lessee. And at the end of the lease term, the lessee decides whether they want to purchase the equipment or return the equipment. This is how the leasing works. Now, many clients do ask me that what is the difference between lease and rent? So let me use this platform to say that there is actually no difference between lease and rent. But in material handling division sector and in this industry, rent is something which is perceived as there is maintenance, repairs, and everything which is included into a single bundle, which is rent. And in lease, it is always a dry lease, which is the maintenance, repairs, and everything is taken care of directly by the OEM. If the assets are not working, doesn't mean that during the lock-in period, the clients do not pay the lease amounts. So that is the basic difference. Rent, I would say, is a wet lease, which comes including maintenance repairs. And the lease that we are talking about today is a dry lease, which can be an operating lease or a finance lease. So I've right now just covered of what is the difference between lease and rent and how it should be conceived. Now let us look at what are the different forms of dry lease and what is the difference between them as well. So the lease can be classified mainly into an operating lease or a finance lease. There are certain benefits associated with both of them. And looking at the usage of the equipment, the client should ideally decide which kind of lease is best suitable for their business needs. I personally find operating lease to be far more attractive to various clients because it comes with a lot of flexibility. The number one part in operating lease is that the client is not paying the entire asset value while doing the leasing transaction, because the leasing companies take residual risk on the assets. They take a gamble that when the asset comes back to them, whether they would be able to deploy it, they would be able to maximize by giving it out again on a short-term secondary rent, etc. So they anticipate the profits that they would be able to make, and the anticipated profits are shared with the client upfront by charging them a lower lease amount, not recovering the entire asset value. And then there is also comes along in operating lease the flexibility to the client that they are not necessarily saddled with the equipment. They can simply return the equipment, or they can give their intention at the end of the term what they wish to do, which can be like they want to extend the rental term for another 6 months or 1 year by paying a reduced lease amount, or they can make an offer to purchase also if they win, if they want the assets, which can be sold by a leasing company to them at the fair market value existing in the market at that point in time. So these are some of the benefits which is in operating lease. It's off balance sheet. It's not a capitalized item. The companies take expense, treat it as expense, and take the tax benefit on the entire lease amount that they pay. They are hedging against the asset obsolescence because some new technologies may come up and they might simply want to return the equipment. The flexibility that I spoke about, returning, re-rent, buying, and they do not pay the entire asset value. Whereas in finance lease, in their books of accounts, they capitalize the assets. They have to take depreciation on that. The equipment is eventually, when they pay the last rental or a pre-decided purchase amount, the equipment is transferred to them. They have to purchase the equipment. They don't have the flexibility to return the equipment, and they end up paying the full asset value, which is principal plus interest. So that's the main difference between operating lease and finance lease. Now, when should a company choose operating lease and when should the company choose finance lease depends on the usage or a particular asset type and how they are using it. For example, if the client is certain that a particular asset is going to last for maybe 9 to 15 years, then a finance lease option becomes more suitable. That they know that they are, going to use the assets for a very, very long time. But if the client is using the assets for maybe 7 years, 6 years, or maybe 8 years at the most, then the operating lease makes much more sense rather than a finance lease because they always have the flexibility to extend the rent and transfer the disposal headaches to a leasing company. So this is where I would say that where a client should choose a finance lease and where the client should choose an operating lease. Now, there are various cash flow structures also available, which many clients are not aware of. One is a simple standard. The client says, what would be my lease rentals? It's an equated cash flow. But there are also certain other structures and various other benefits associated with it. For example, a step-up structure where the client has a particular project where at the initial phase of the project, the client is not going to make a lot of money. They don't want to invest in by paying lease rent as well. And they want to treat it as what is going to be my income and what is going to be my expense. And I should be just paying the profit part to a leasing company. This is also possible for certain clients with certain financial strengths, wherein the client pays a lower lease amount at the beginning, and then it can be structured to the client's requirement. As in, for example, the first 2 years, the client might choose to pay only 20 rupees, or in the next third and fourth year, they might want to pay 50 rupees. And then in the last year, they want to balloon up the payment. So all this structure can be worked out in consultation with the client to meet their requirement. Also, there is a other structure step down where the client is absolutely cash rich, does not know where to invest cash, but still he wants to hedge against the asset obsolescence and wants to go for a lease structure and want to avail a maximum tax benefit in the initial years. So it can be worked out that the client can pay a higher lease amount at the beginning, get a better tax benefit, and he can also get a better interest rate by choosing the step down structure because he's paying upfront a bigger amount. So the interest component goes down, and this helps him maintain the interest rate. Also, he gets what is beneficial. He gets better tax benefits, and cash was never a constraint for this. So these are the different kind of cash flow structures also that can be customized. Many times client do not use the right terminology. So I also would like to educate that what is EMI, what is lease, and what is rent. EMI is something when the clients take the equipment on a loan. They pay the equated monthly installment. It is a loan structure generally, and it's a sum of the principal and interest amount. Whereas the rent or lease, as I told earlier, it's one and the same thing. Rental amounts and lease amount. It's the only difference whether that rent is with maintenance or without maintenance, and whether the lease is generally a dry lease. Moving on to the current market scenario, I honestly don't think I need to elaborate on this topic a lot because everybody knows that cash is the king at the moment. I have seen various companies that are earlier not even willing to evaluate other options, but now their mindsets have changed. They are looking at least evaluating and deploying the cash in a prudent manner and looking at various options and alternatives that can help them save the cash. Liquidity is a must in the market in this uncertain times. I have seen that various office leases are closing down. Work from home culture is also getting adapted. And even the banks, if you look at certain businesses which are like, I would not like to name the customers, but who are into, let's say, movie business, film business, or other like issuing visas to the customers. So this kind of businesses, in spite of the fact that they might be cash rich at the moment, even the banks are having conservative approach and they are cautious while lending money to the clients. So this is how the market scenario has changed over a period of time. And it is prudent, it's best for clients to at least evaluate the options before taking a decision on what works best for them, rather than following the standard norms which they used to follow earlier. In this slide, I will take you across some of the benefits that we see in this structure. One is in operating lease, there is a low cost to the client because he's not paying the entire asset value. Ideally, the leasing companies or the customers, they work together, the finance team or at the client's side. The finance team and the leasing company works together to see whether the lease is working out to be cheaper as compared to their cost of funds, their weighted average cost of capital. The weighted average cost of capital is for even a AAA rated companies, it's close to around 11 to 12% because if the monies are deployed in their businesses, that is the amount that they can make easily over a period of time. So whether to invest that money in the business rather than or capitalize the assets is the choice that they have to make. And we ensure that the cost to the client is lower than their weighted average cost of capital. They enjoy the predictable cash flow, unlike a loan scenario where loans are benchmarked to a particular bank rate. The lease rentals are fixed for the term. So they know that this is going to be my cash flow over a period of time. That is not going to change, come what may, whether the interest rate fluctuates, goes down or goes up. These lease rentals are fixed for the term. Because these are off balance sheet items, the balance sheet also looks much better. They are not increasing debt on books. This is treated as an expense. There are various financial ratios like capital adequacy ratio, EVA, and various other financial ratios that generally a CFO would look at are better in the leasing option. The main advantage that I personally like is who wants to be an owner of an asset which will depreciate in around 7 to 8 years or will become unusable or usable with maintenance, repairs, and downtime, all those things. If a company can successfully offload the risk of disposal to a third party, which is a leasing company, then this really needs to be looked at in a different perspective in this industry. So as I told, yes, the disposal problem is not of the clients. He just has to return the equipment. It also comes with the flexibility that midterm, if they want to, if a particular place is closing down, then they can probably upgrade or swap the equipments, return the equipments back to a leasing company and going for a new equipment. Obviously, it's not that it is there is no loss in doing this. There is a loss when the clients do this, but the loss is much, much lesser as compared to the loss that they would have made if they were the owner of the equipment. So this flexibility is also possible. They can combine various assets, the material handling equipments, racks, pallets, the entire warehouse can be clubbed and leased out. Not only the warehousing equipments, I'm diverting a bit, even the asset types like if they have air conditions, laptops, desktops, all these things the leasing company can club into a single schedule. So there is much more flexibility available in this scenario. Many companies also look at the flexibility that they want. So the return and buyback option, which we discussed some time back, is always available with them. At the end, you have to see whether their goal is achieved or not, whether they are able to preserve cash and are there actual savings. And that is where the finance team at the client's level need to look at an analysis where they can ascertain whether what is the saving, if there is a saving. This one particular saving, I would like to touch upon this, that many companies, whether they do an operating lease or a finance lease, how they can save on taxes. If it is a tax paying company, I would first like to touch upon what happens if they are taking the assets on capex when they are buying it. When they buy it, as per IT Act, the depreciation allowed on plant and machinery is 15% on a written down value basis. So we will see that chart also in a moment, but it takes around more than 15 to 18 years to write off the entire assets when they are capitalized in the books. Whereas in lease, what happens is that tax, as per the IT Act, the tax benefit is available on the entire lease rent. 25.17 is the tax rate. The lease tenure can be structured also in a manner which I showed you earlier to avail the tax benefits in the shorter term if they want. Now, let's say if a client is for sure wanting to become the owner of the asset, the tax benefit which they would have got in 18 or 15 years, because they are cash rich, they can pay a higher lease rental amount and avail the entire tax benefit which they would have got in such a long period in a short time, like 3 years or 4 years. And then they still can become the owner of the asset. Just to take you through the tax chart, I have illustrated assuming that the asset cost is, let's say, 1,000 rupees. The depreciation that they will get is 150 as per the IT Act, which is 15%. And the WDV, the asset is now 850 rupees in their books. The tax benefit that they will get in the first year is 38. And similarly, on an 850 rupees, now they will get a depreciation of 128, and the tax benefit will keep on lowering down. And in 15 years, you see that there is still some amount which is left, which will go on probably up to 18 or 20 years to write off the asset completely. Whereas in lease, you will see that if let's say the asset is costing 1,000 rupees and you are paying a quarterly rent of 66 rupees, since the tax rate is 25.17%, you can very well assume that at least one rent you are getting back as a tax benefit itself. So you are probably ending up on a post-tax basis paying only 3 rentals. And the tax benefit that you accrue in 5 years, you will see that it is much more as compared to what the tax benefit you will get, or if the company will get, when even if they lease it or when they buy it and use the assets for even 15, 18 years. So many times I get a question from clients, we are absolutely cash rich company, I don't require funding. Lease should not be looked as if it is a funding. It is not only for the clients who are looking for funding. It is for the clients who want to do a better tax planning. They want to save on taxes and they want to hedge against asset obsolescence. Even if they don't want to hedge against asset obsolescence and if they want to become the owner of the asset, still this structure for a profit making company, a cash rich company, works well. We have clients who are AA, AAA rated clients. Even banks are our clients for certain asset types. So when we speak about such names, people wonder, I mean, they are like so cash rich. Why would they borrow money? This is not borrowing. This is a this is a decision which is evaluated by various finance team members and come at a conclusion that yes, there is a 5 to 10% at least savings on taxes alone, then we should go for it. So I would urge the companies to evaluate this part. I'm not getting into a detailed comparative analysis, but I think the glimpse is enough to at least show where what I'm talking about and where the savings are on taxes. So just to summarize the benefits, what we discussed earlier in earlier slides, lease versus buy. You conserve cash in lease because you are not paying upfront the entire amount, obviously. It's an off-balance sheet item. You get the flexibility of returning and you are hedging against asset obsolescence. Many times if the equipment is there are too many equipments and scattered around the country, then this is also one of the point which is worth considering, that when you own the equipment, the companies have to do a physical audit. But when they lease an equipment, it's not a statutory requirement. This is a good benefit for the companies who have too many assets at too many locations. The IRR is lower. The interest rate is lower as compared to their own cost of funds, at least on a post-tax basis. I have come across a client where they had said that a leasing company is charging me 12% interest rate and I'm getting a loan at 10%. Why should I go for lease? I would rather go for a loan at 10% rather than a lease at 12%. Now, this prima facie looks very logical. But if the client was to look at on a post-tax basis, then a 12% lease will work out to be equivalent to an 8% loan because of the tax benefit that they will get. In loan, they will capitalize the asset. They will get a tax benefit on depreciation. They will get a tax benefit on the interest component. Even if they club it together, the tax benefit is larger in lease, and even if we do the math, probably even a 12% lease will work out on a post-tax basis cheaper to a 10% loan. So this is how it should be looked at. The financial ratios are better in a leasing structure. The cash flows also can be customized, and they can club all the asset types into a single contract, including accessories, and eventually there is a reduced cost of ownership. So these are some of the benefits. So I end on the benefit part over here. One more aspect I would like to touch upon is sale and leaseback. Many companies do look at, you know, availing equity or cash infusion in their company. This also becomes a good proposal for them. They have their existing portfolio, the asset register. They would have various assets in that. They are in need of cash, and also they want to do a better planning that helps them save on taxes on an ongoing basis. So what they can do is they can, rather than looking at loan or other alternative methods of raising money, they also have an option under this arrangement that they can free up the idle equity which is lying as a form of low depreciating assets, which can be MHEs, racks, storage equipments, or probably even furniture fit outs, IT equipments, various other equipments. So they can free up this idle equity, sell it to a leasing company, get cash. This cash comes from sale of equipment, so it's not a debt, and they end up paying lease amounts to the companies. And on that expense that they make by paying lease amounts, they get a better tax benefit as well. The financial ratios become better. Nothing is changing for them because it's just a paper transaction. They continue to use the same equipment which they had. At the same time, while doing this transaction, if there are certain equipments they want to dispose of, so if it's a, let's say, 100 rupee WDV or a 100 rupee asset in their books, when they are actually trying to sell, they might get only 50 out of it, and they will make a 50 rupee loss if they were to actually simply sell it. But under a sale and leaseback arrangement, the leasing company can purchase the equipment at 100 itself, so there is no loss in their company's books, because that 50 rupee, although it is a loss, it will be covered up in other rentals. On books, they don't have to show a loss. So that flexibility that they can get. They can consolidate all asset types into a single rental agreement. So there is less paperwork, and transfer the risk and cost of ownership and disposal as well. Because when they do a sale and leaseback transaction, after the lease term is over, they can return those equipments to a leasing company. The process is pretty simple. It's not that difficult. Let's see it. The company says that what is the written down value of assets. The leasing company verifies those assets in their books. And then if they want to go ahead with this, a simple agreement is signed. They can return the obsolete equipment. They can sell the equipment, as I told you, and simply return those equipments and acquire new assets as well under the same contract. And the cash is paid by the leasing company, and they simply keep on paying the rentals. Sale and leaseback works out much larger for larger deals also. It works wonders, because if the company is looking at if they have 50 crores worth of depreciating assets lying on their books, this can be a good methodology to raise capital by just lightening their balance sheet as well. So I have covered all the topics on the leasing part. I would like to take certain case studies in the industry which we have done recently, interacted in this last 2 years. So one logistics company. They were looking for cash, and they had already acquired 5 to 10 crores worth of assets, warehousing equipments, and invested capital in the previous year. The business was slow. it is slow and picking up by God's grace. And they wanted capital injection. And when they evaluated this model, they realized that not only are they getting capital injection, and they are also saving on taxes. And rather than looking at alternate methods or even for acquiring new equipments, they did a sale and lease back of their existing assets, whatever they acquired last year. The leasing company reimbursed them the entire value. And going forward, the new equipments that they acquire is also leased under the same contract. They saw a saving of close to around 7% on the transaction as compared to what they were following. And I think it worked out better for them to go and evaluate this option. It was in the logistics industry. Looking at even the other companies like which are into online sales, they come up with warehouses. They also come up with studios to display all these assets. And in warehousing, they have seen that they don't want, there are some multinational companies, they do not want to be saddled with the assets. Maybe after 3 years or 4 years, they want to shift locations. Or so it's better for them that they go in for a 4 or a 5-year lease as compared to purchasing the equipment and becoming the owner of such assets. And what happens is that they also don't want to take a loan and use their existing fund-based limits. All the companies, they have fund-based limits and non-fund based limits. In fund-based limits, they can take loans and all those things. And in non-fund based limits, they can give bank guarantees and such kind of collaterals. Now, this particular client was not that cash rich, so the bankers were not willing to give funding for this client unless there is a provision of bank guarantee. Now, many companies do ask, okay, if we have to give a bank guarantee, then why not we acquire the assets? Why not we have to block the monies for giving a bank guarantee? So how does a bank guarantee make sense? So no, it is wrong because they do have probably banking lines, non-fund based limits, and bank guarantee is covered under their non-fund based limits. And they can simply convert a non-fund based limit into a fund based limits by issuing a bank guarantee, and they can get the tax benefit and use and conserve their fund based limits, which they can use it for their business operations. The third case which I would like to say was a paint manufacturer, which is a AAA rated client. They've been used to renting out equipments for whenever the tenure is 1 or 2 years. And when the tenure is long, because they are into this business, they know that in warehouses, they would, for those their own equipments, they will require the assets for 7 to 8 years. They have a history of using the assets for a long time now. They evaluated that whether should we buy the assets, and they saw what happens when they buy the asset. They use it for 7, 8 years. Towards the end of that, there are downtimes which are there. When they evaluated, they saw that if they get an option that we lease it for, let's say, 5 years, and at the end of 5 years, we decide to keep on using newer equipment, or decide at the end of 5 years whether we want to use the assets for another 6 years or 7 years, depending on the asset at that point in time. It's better to hedge against asset obsolescence and at the same time get the tax benefit. Now, this is a AAA rated company, and they also went for leasing because of the asset type and the usage pattern of this asset type. Now, looking at all this, it becomes like wonderful that people think that we should go for leasing only. So it's not that. Leasing not necessarily works when the requirement is different. Like I had come across a client where they wanted to acquire forklifts, but the requirement or the lock-in period that they were able to commit for that particular requirement was not more than 1 year. lease always comes with a lock-in. Whether you choose 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years, and lease, the maximum tenure for lease can not be more than 5 years. At the end of 5 years, yes, you can decide whether you want to extend the term, but the initial or the primary term is always not more than 5 years. Coming back to this slide, they wanted the forklifts for not more than 1 year. Now, when they look at the cash flow, if it's a brand new asset, no leasing company is going to not recover around 70% or at least 60% of the asset value if it's a brand new assets. Because once the asset becomes second hand, that renting is something which is anticipated on short-term rents and profits. So finally, the client decided that yes, short-term rent of used equipment makes much more sense if they are going in for a 1 year lock-in or no lock-in rather than taking a brand new assets for their requirement. Now, this was for a particular requirement. Had this been for a longer term, leasing would have made more sense. So for a 3 year or a 4 year or a 5 year, or mostly for 4 and 5 years, leasing is something which the client should look at. For a very short term of 1 or 2 years, it becomes a expensive option if they don't have a back-to-back contract or if it is not for their own utilization. And here I'm talking about an operating lease, not a finance lease. If they want to become the owner of the asset at the end of the lease, then even a shorter tenure can be looked at because they are not leasing it for money or hedging against asset obsolescence, but they are taking a shorter term to maximize on the tax benefits. So that is a different way the deals are looked at. I hope that these case studies were also useful. Various industries lease equipments, including logistics, pharma companies, infrastructure companies, e-commerce. And if the companies are interested in leasing, the documentation or the process, the way it works, is that the customer decides the OEM. It is not the leasing company. The customer decides the OEM. They negotiate what they want, whether they want maintenance, repairs, and everything included into the invoice itself or not. Then the client deals with the leasing company and they say that, all right, for every 1,000 rupee, what is the rental that you are going to charge? Because a leasing company does not give you a full rental. It will always give you that rental per 1,000 is going to be an X amount, depending on the tenure and the asset type. So once the client and the leasing company decides that and enters into a master rental agreement, then the customer can place a purchase request or a rent request to the leasing company. And what a leasing company does is simply copies and pastes the same requirement on their letterhead and issues the purchase order onto the OEM or the partner of OEM. After that, whenever the assets are delivered, the leasing company asks the client whether the assets have been delivered as per their satisfaction, as per the purchase request that they had raised. And once the client confirms that, the leasing company pays to the OEM or its partners, and the client starts paying a rent on a regular basis. I have covered most of the benefits and the conceptions on the leasing which were there. I hope I have been able to clear some of the doubts which you might have, and I am open to any questions and answers which can help you evaluate this better.
So, Devesh, thank you so much. I think this was a great session and I personally learned a lot while going through this session. And we have got lots of questions, so we'll try to accommodate all of them because we have time available with us. So I would like to begin with the first question. You have used the term written down value or WDV during the course of your presentation, right?
Right.
So what basically is a written down value, and is it dependent on the condition of equipment, or is it just a financial term?
Good question, Abhishek. So many companies say that we write down the assets in 5 years, not 15 years. Some companies say that we write down the assets in 7 years. Where different companies can have different methodologies of writing or depreciating the assets and writing down the assets. But in books of accounts, every company has two books. One is books of accounts and another is income tax books of accounts, which they compulsorily have to follow. So as per the Income Tax Act, the depreciation rate has been assigned for different asset category. For example, for IT equipment, laptops, desktops, etc., the depreciation rate was earlier 60%. Since last 2-3 years, it is 40%. For any assets which comes under the category of plant and machinery, the depreciation rate is 15%. So now coming back to what is WDV, if 1000 rupee is the cost of the asset, in the first year, the client depreciates the assets by 150 rupees and the asset cost becomes 850. 850 is the written down value of that particular asset for the next year. So for the next year, the the cost of the asset for the client in income tax books of accounts is 850. On that, he will take 15% depreciation now, and then the written down value of that asset is reduced accordingly. And that is something which is fixed by the government. It is an income tax act. It is not different from companies to companies as it is in books of accounts, but it is as per the income tax act.
So yeah, it's well understood. If I personally have a follow-up question on this, so that means that the actual saleable value of equipment can be different than the written down value.
Definitely, because the assets for in written down value can will okay. So if the written down value of a laptop, let's say in the first year, is becomes 60. Now, when they actually try to sell a second-hand laptop, the client is never going to get 60. Same thing with material handling equipment. In material handling equipment, the as per Income Tax Act, the depreciation has only happened 15%. If the client tries to sell a particular forklift, which was costing, let's say, 1000, he might not necessarily get 850. And if they get less, they have to book a loss in their books.
Okay, okay, understood. So the next question that we have is, what happens to the equipment once it is returned to the leasing company after the contract period?
Now, the leasing company has not recovered the asset value during the term. Leasing company who takes residual risks generally have a team and a warehouse of its own, where the team refurbishes the assets and try to milk the juice out of the asset, whichever it might be, by finding a market for renting out second-hand equipment. So, for example, if a client is looking for a 2 month or a 3 month contract or a 6 month contract, or if they don't want a lock-in period, then those equipments which has been returned back to a leasing company, they lease it or they rent it out to such customers. So there is long-term usage and short-term usage. There is a usage with lock-in period and there is a usage without lock-in period. So this equipment becomes handy by renting it without the lock-in period. And if the leasing company fails to rent out these assets, then they might incur a loss also. But they work on a portfolio basis. So some equipments they make a loss, some equipments they make a profit, more than expected profit. On an average, they try to maintain the portfolio. But the client benefits because that anticipated profit, maybe there may not be there if something has changed in the industry. So that's how the leasing company either makes money or loses money.
Right, right. And the next question is that, like, what happens if there is a default in lease payments for whatever reason? The company is going through a tough financial patch or something like that, and it is a lock-in period of 3 years. And interim period, there is a default in lease payments. How are these situations tackled or taken care of?
This happens similar to any banking arrangement. If the client has taken a loan, this is a financial obligation, contractual obligation, and they will be reported in the RBI as a defaulter. Banks will stop giving them funding. So if they delay the rentals or if they default on the rentals, they are definitely headed for a court suit, and the funding in their alternate in the banking industry itself for them will become difficult.
Right. So the next question which has come in is that does the buyback price of equipment at the end of the contract finalized beforehand at the start of the contract or decided at the end of it based on equipment condition? How does a lease company look at that?
In finance lease, the purchase value at the end of the term is predefined upfront, irrespective of the asset quality. The client has to buy the asset at that predefined value.
Okay.
In operating lease, there is no fixed bargain option which is given to the client at the inception of the contract. It depends on the asset quality, the market conditions at that point in time. It's all a game of demand and supply at that point in time. And the price, the fair market value is decided at that point in time. It is an open-ended scenario.
Right. So again, I have a follow-up question for this query. That's suppose a customer starts with an operating lease. At the end of a lock-in period of 3 or 5 years, he decides to buy off the equipment, making it technically a finance lease.
Right.
Then how does it get treated financially in terms of tax savings and all that? Because you showed that clear-cut demarcation between finance and operating lease and the benefits that customer get in either of those models. How does it happen? And
So the benefits that I showed you on the tax front, it was only versus buy when the client is capitalizing it and taking it as a loan, as compared to the tax benefit which they get on the lease. Now, because the bargain option or the purchase option was not given to the client at the inception of the contract, the lease, even if they buy the assets at the end of the term, it will be a fair market value and it will be treated as an operating lease. It will not come under the purview of finance lease because there was no guaranteed price which was decided at the inception. Many clients do tell us that we want to still treat it as an operating lease, and they exchange side letters that no, you will send us, and they don't show side letters to the auditors, but which is not a fair market practice.
okay, okay, understood. So the next question that we have got, I think that's a very apt question for today's session. That what are the criteria to be qualified for lease? Can any company approach any leasing company and get a lease just like that?
So the general criteria in looking at today's environment, most of the companies have credit rating. They have to be an investment grade company. By that I mean that if the credit rating of the company is BBB plus and above, there are various credit rating agencies which give this credit rating. It's available on Google also for most of the companies, which is like CRISIL, CARE, ICRA, and so on. If the credit rating of a company is BBB plus and above, then there are chances that the funding will happen easily. The leasing companies will be able to establish the credit limits for them. However, it also depends on back-to-back contracts that they have won. Like for example, it's a double B rated company, not falling into the investment grade criteria. But if they have a back-to-back strong contracts, which are from A-rated customers, where the leasing company can see that there is a guarantee cash flow, which is going to happen in this company, in spite of the fact that they are double B rated, then also the leasing company can take a call. So there is nothing like which company can be funded or cannot be funded. But as a standard thumb rule, if somebody was to say, then a triple B plus rated and above company it's far easier to fund those companies as compared to the companies which are below triple B plus rated companies.
Right, understood. So the next question which is coming is about the total life cycle cost between two finance models. So as you rightly mentioned during the presentation, this is like a cash injection for any company, that sale and lease back model. So those are all cash injections and you are spreading your finances over 3, 5, 7 years. But at the same time, if we compare pure financial terms and compare a buy model versus a lease model over a working life of say 7 to 10 years of an equipment, beyond which the maintenance becomes very expensive, financially, which will score out and why?
The tenure after 5 years, the more and more the tenure of lease increases, the savings keeps on going down.
Okay.
If it is an equated cash flow.
So if you could explain that, please.
Yeah, sure. So if it is a 5-year lease, it's an equated cash flow. If the client, and if there is a saving of, let's say 12%. Now the client at the inception, they are seeing that yes, there is a saving of 12%. But now that they have not returned the equipment and then they have leased it further. So the savings goes down from probably 12% to 5% or 6%. Then if they extend the rent for another 2 years and say, let's say up to 9 years, then it might almost become the same whether they were buying it or leasing it out. If they extend it to 10th year, then they will be at a loss. They should not have leased it in the first place.
Okay. Okay. So if I understand you correctly, that if equipment is returned after the lease period of 3 or 5 years, financially that is more beneficial than continuing the lease beyond 5 years. Am I right in understanding that?
Yes, beyond for a larger term. So 5 years, you extend it to 6 years or 7 years, it will still work. But if you start extending the lease beyond 8 years and 9 years, then it may not work out to be that beneficial.
Right, right. So ideally, the ideal scenario should be that 5-year lease period, then refresh the equipment to be financially on the gaining side.
Yes. So 5 to 8 years is what I would recommend.
Right, understood. So now the next question which has come in is that what happens if the equipment gets damaged beyond repair, or it is like health audited to be scrapped during the lease period? Like 5 years is the lock-in period, say by 4th year it is like in scrappable condition. How is this situation handled in a lease finance way of handling things?
So if it is an operating lease, the clients, while returning the assets, they have to, when they return, the asset has to be at least in a working condition. That is one. Second, let's say that if it's a 5-year contract and in the end of 4th year itself, the asset is not in a usable condition, still the client has to keep on paying the rentals for the 5th year as well, because there was a lock-in for a 5-year. At the end of 5 years, if there is a difference in the market price that it could have fetched if it was a working asset and the scrap value, that difference becomes payable by the client.
Okay, so just a short follow-up question, that is this mentioned in that lease agreement that this differential would have to be paid, or is it decided at the time of end of the lease period?
In the agreement, it always says that the assets have to be returned in a working condition. Normal wear and tear is acceptable. Now, if
Okay.
the asset is not working only completely, then they have to either bear the cost of what it costs to make it into a working condition, or if it is not, if the leasing company is not able to make it into a working condition at all, then whatever is the scrap value vis-a-vis whatever is that working condition 5-year-old equipment could have fetched in the market, there would be a delta, and that delta becomes payable by the client if at all it is there.
Okay. Okay. Now, the next is the interesting question. Who insures the equipment? Like, is it the leasing company or the customer or the OEM?
Okay, so there are various ways this can be done. One, and ideally suited, is that the company who is in possession of the equipment insures the equipment. As a standard practice, that happens because they have a block insurance policy. They are able to avail a better rate on the insurance premiums, and that is why that works to be the optimum solution for insuring the equipment. However, certain clients do ask the leasing companies that you should insure the equipment and build it into the rentals. Now, that is not a wise demand to ask, because if a leasing company was to include the insurance in the rentals, then what will happen is that they will not get a no claim bonus, because leasing company will always keep a buffer, and there will be no transparency. Another
Right.
way is that in leasing company says that, all right, we will insure the equipment and we will bill you as per actuals. So the leasing company insures the equipment, and whatever is the insurance premium every year, they raise a debit note onto the client and as a supporting document. They provide a whatever the premium receipt is. Now, this may also work, but it is not advisable, because the leasing company will not be able to fetch the premium rates that the client might be able to fetch. Number one. Second, the leasing company could have insured various other assets. So let's say there are client A, B, and C, and if a leasing company has insured assets for A, B, and C, and if there is there are some stolen equipments in company C, then what happens is that the insurance company raises the premium for all the three companies. Because in the books of insurance company, the insurer is the leasing company. So why should other clients be suffering because there has been some theft in which they have no part to play in?
Okay. Okay.
So the company insures the equipment as if they were the owners of the equipment. Now, for the company, nothing changes. The obligation of a leasing company is only one in the arrangement. It is making the payment to the OEM or the partner of the OEM. There is no other obligation on supply, maintenance, insurance, etc., etc., that comes onto a leasing company, except for taking residual risk on the assets and making the payment to the OEM.
Okay. Okay. Clear. So, the next question is, what sort of security, mortgage, or collateral is required for leasing? Is there any?
So it depends on the financial strength of the company. If a client is, as I told you, triple B plus and triple B plus and rated above that, then there might be no requirement of any collaterals other than the equipment itself, because they are the owners of the assets. But other than that, a bank guarantee or a lien on fixed deposit is the collaterals which the leasing companies accept.
Okay. Okay. So, as you mentioned that this equipment is owned by the company. So, what we get next is, once the equipment are returned and they are available with the leasing company, are those equipment releasable, and are those rates different than a new equipment?
Yes, they are again released to in a secondary market, definitely there would be a difference in the rate, and that is a market rent for short-term period. And you cannot compare it with the long-term lease, because long-term lease will always be cheaper as compared to a short-term lease.
Okay. Even with a equipment which has come back from a lease period, if we take the valuation of that equipment and put it on a short-term lease, that will not be as lower as compared to a new equipment long-term lease.
No, it might not be. If it is only for a 3-month tenure or a 4-month tenure,
Okay.
probably it can be equivalent, but it all depends on the demand at that point in time. For example, if the assets has come back to a leasing company, they've been trying to re-rent it for a long time. For 6 months, they have tried and failed. The asset is simply lying in their warehouse. They might give it to out at dirt cheap rate. But if there is a demand which is like high, like during this COVID times, if I was to compare this to a laptop, I'm sorry, I'm digressing a bit, diverting a bit, that the warehouse is empty for leasing companies because all the laptops, there is a huge demand. For material handling equipment, depending on the demand at that point in time and how efficient the remarketing team of that leasing company is, that will determine the rentals.
Right. Right. So the next question that we have got is that will GST be included in cost of equipment for calculating lease rentals?
So it's a tax neutral deal for the client. So there are various structures of arriving at the lease rentals. But whatever the tax benefit available to the leasing company on the OEM's invoice value is generally passed on to the client, and the rentals attract GST. That GST input credit also the client gets. So in a nutshell, it is a tax neutral deal for the client.
Okay, so if I just this is an important question. If I just expand it a bit, for example, an OEM sells to a leasing company and it levies GST on its invoice while selling it to the leasing company. So first of all, will the leasing company be able to take an input tax credit on that? And will that become a part of the calculation of lease rental?
The leasing company will be able to take input tax credit on that. That amount will be transferred to the company, to the client in various, it can be transferred in various manners. It can be built into by lowering the rent, but that benefit will be passed on to the client in some manner or the other. It will not be a cost to the client.
Right. And the lease amount that is being charged to the end customer, will it have an additional GST component added to it? That this plus GST? I mean, as per it has to be.
Yes. The rent is always, or the lease amount is always excluding GST. Whatever is the GST rate applicable on that asset category, the same rate becomes applicable also on the lease rent.
Okay. Okay. Got it. And we have a follow-up question on insurance actually, where the question I'll just read out verbatim. Can we take insurance of equipment which is not owned by us? So if we are taking something on lease and we don't own that equipment actually, so can we take insurance on that?
Yes, it's a very good question, and I've been asked this frequently. Yes, you can take the insurance policy in your name, with beneficiary being the leasing company. Insurance is dependent on not the ownership of the asset, but it is dependent on the possession of the equipment also. So in this case, the client is in possession of the equipment, and yes, the insurance can be taken in client's name, or it can be covered under their block insurance policy with endorsement of the financing company as a beneficiary.
Right. And if something goes wrong with the equipment, maybe I'm revisiting that question, but if something goes wrong with that equipment, the claim process has to be done by the client, not by the leasing company.
Yes, it has to be done by the client. The money from the insurance company comes to the leasing company. Now that amount is not belonging to the leasing company, but it is of the clients itself. The client has to use that amount by replacing the equipment which has been stolen.
Okay.
Or
Stolen or
repairing
damaged.
or damaged. So
Okay.
the client provides the repair bill to the leasing company, and the leasing company pays the amount received from the claim to the company which is repairing those assets. And after repairing, if there is any leftover from the claim amount, then the leasing company will transfer that amount to the client. And if there is a deficiency, then the client bears the deficient amount and pays to the repairing company.
Okay. Okay. Now, the next question is that we are speaking about MHE so far, but is a static structure like racking also available under leasing?
Yes, they are, and we have done that also. I mean, many companies have done leasing of racks, pallets, and all those things as well.
Right. So just a follow through question on that, all the operating and finance lease parameters are also applicable for racking, like getting back the racks and all that?
Yes.
Okay. And how is that handled, that after 5 years, 6 years, that if it has to be returned, like how does a lease company deal with that?
If the obligation of returning the equipment is of clients, they return it to a nominated place, and then the leasing company either is able to lease out those assets again, or they consider the scrap value.
Okay.
So the
So
rentals will differ, as I told, on the ability of a leasing company to take residual risk on the particular asset type. So if it is a material handling equipment, vis-a-vis if it's a pallet, the rental will not be the same.
right, right. So the next question is about risks. So what are the risks that each of the entity has in a leasing proposition? Whether we talk about OEM, a leasing company, or a customer, what are the risks that people should be aware of?
There are, so I do not see any risk except for the fact that clients have this misconception that if the asset is not working, then why should I pay the lease amount? Now, I don't consider that as a risk, but that is the only question which has come around. I don't see any risk if it, because once the contract is signed, it's a lock-in. You are using the assets as if it was your own. So whatever risks that are associated in buying the assets, the same risks are associated with leasing the asset, or in fact a little lesser risk, because you know that at least at the end of 5 years or 4 years you will return the equipment. So at least the risk and rewards have been transferred to a leasing company as compared to the client.
Right, right. I think, Devesh, we are done with all the questions so far. And I thank you so much for patiently answering all these questions, and absolutely with ultimate accuracy, I would say. So once again, thank you so much. And it was an indeed great pleasure to have you in this session. And I think you were able to really take care of all the queries and all the doubts about this particular subject with utmost clarity. And with that, I would request that any of the audience, if they have any queries or any issues that they would like to discuss on this particular topic, please reach out to us and we'll make sure that we are able to address your queries. One more request, that we have posted a feedback form in our chat section. We request all of you to please take a few moments and fill that feedback form. It is very important for us to get your feedback on how we have fared so far and what all you would like us to improve. And you can also mention if you want us to cover any other topic in this storage and handling knowledge series platform. With that, we bring this event to a close with a huge thank you to Devesh for his time and inputs. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. Thank you, everybody.